What if the serial killer you barely escaped didn't stay dead? What if death only made him stronger, able to haunt your dreams and hunt through supernatural means? And what if the only way to stop him was to confront the family secrets your mother took to her grave? Welcome back to Depthline, where every story has depth. Scott Derrickson returns to direct The Black Phone 2, the highly anticipated sequel to his 2022 breakout horror hit that earned over $160 million worldwide. Set in October 1982, 4 years after Finney Blake defeated the grabber in that soundproof basement, this sequel shifts the focus to his younger sister Gwen, played by Madeleine McGraw, in a performance that critics are calling the film's emotional anchor. Mason Thames returns as 17-year-old Finney, now struggling with PTSD and his father's inherited rage, while Ethan Hawke comes back as the grabber, transformed from a human predator into a ghostly menace who refuses to let death stop him from tormenting teens. The film opens with a nightmare. Gwen Blake thrashes in her sleep, trapped in a vision that feels less like a dream and more like being pulled through time. She sees Alpine Lake Camp in 1957, a remote mountain retreat covered in snow. 3 boys are playing near the frozen lake when something goes terribly wrong. They vanish beneath the ice, their screams echoing across decades directly into Gwen's mind. Then the black rotary phone rings, that same ominous phone from the first film, and on the other end is a voice Gwen recognizes but never expected to hear again. Her mother, Hope. Gwen wakes up gasping. These visions have been intensifying for months, becoming more vivid and more frequent. Unlike the prophetic dreams from the first film that helped her find Finney, these visions feel like memories that don't belong to her, like she's experiencing someone else's trauma secondhand. The supernatural gift she inherited from her mother, once a tool for saving her brother, now feels like a curse, pulling her towards something dark and inevitable. Meanwhile, Finney is not the confident survivor we left at the end of the first film. Mason Thames portrays him as a young man consumed by anger and fear that he doesn't know how to process. He's dealing with extreme PTSD, flinching at unexpected sounds, having violent outbursts at school. He's become what he feared most, his father. Terrence Blake, played by Jeremy Davies, has finally gotten sober and stopped the physical abuse that defined their childhood. But the damage is already done. The family is broken in ways that sobriety alone can't fix. Gwen tries to talk to Finney about her visions, but he dismisses them with barely concealed contempt. He spent 3 years trying to convince himself that what happened in that basement was just a traumatic experience, not something supernatural. Accepting that ghosts and psychic visions are real would mean accepting that the horror isn't over, and Finney desperately needs it to be over. Despite Finney's skepticism, Gwen convinces him and their friend Ernesto, called Ernie and played by Miguel Cazares Mora, in a different role from the first film, to accompany her to Alpine Lake Camp. The camp is reopening for the first time in decades, and Gwen's visions insist that something terrible is about to happen there. What she doesn't initially tell them is the personal connection. Their mother Hope once worked at this camp before they were born, and the circumstances of her death, which the family always believed was suicide, may be connected to whatever happened here in 1957. Shortly after arriving, Gwen's visions intensify. She sees her mother as a young woman working at the camp, sees her forming a connection with someone, sees the moment everything went wrong. Hope Blake had the same psychic abilities as Gwen, and those abilities made her a target. The revelation lands like a punch. Their mother didn't kill herself out of madness or depression. She was murdered, and the killer was the grabber during his earliest days of predation, before he became the infamous child abductor of the first film. The grabber is dead. Finney killed him 4 years ago, beat him to death with that phone in an act of desperate survival. But death, as the film repeatedly insists, is just a word. The grabber has returned as something far more dangerous than a human predator, a vengeful spirit with the ability to invade dreams, manipulate reality, and continue his hunting from beyond the grave. Ethan Hawke's performance leans into the supernatural menace. His appearance is dreamlike and disorienting, He wears variations of the masks from the first film, but now they seem to shift and change, reflecting the fluid nature of nightmare logic. The grabber wants revenge on Finney for killing him, but he's learned that the best way to hurt Finney is through Gwen. He begins stalking the camp, appearing in Gwen's visions with increasing frequency and malevolence. Other campers start experiencing nightmares, seeing figures that shouldn't be there, hearing that damned phone ringing in places where no phone exists. The line between dream and reality begins to blur in ways that feel genuinely unsettling. Demian Bichir appears as Mando, a camp counselor and former resident of the area who knows more about the camp's history than he initially reveals. He explains that Alpine Lake has always been a thin place, somewhere the boundary between the living and the dead is permeable. The grabber didn't just choose this location randomly for his earliest killings. He was drawn here by something dark that recognized and amplified his own darkness. As Gwen digs deeper into the mystery, she discovers that the 3 boys who disappeared in 1957 were the grabber's first victims, killed decades before he became the monster of the first film. Their bodies were never found because he hid them beneath the ice of Alpine Lake, weighted down and forgotten. But Gwen's visions show her exactly where they are, and she realizes that freeing their spirits might be the key to stopping the grabber permanently. The relationship between Finney and Gwen becomes the film's emotional core. McGraw and Thames have genuine sibling chemistry, their arguments feeling painfully real. Finney wants to protect Gwen by keeping her away from danger, but Gwen argues that ignoring her visions won't make them stop. She's done being dismissed and underestimated. Her power isn't a curse, it's a responsibility, and she's the only one who can end this. The climax unfolds on 2 parallel fronts. In the physical world, Finney and Ernie work with Mando to break through the ice and recover the bodies of the 3 boys, giving them the burial they were denied for over 2 decades. It's grueling, dangerous work that involves cutting through layers of ice while a winter storm closes in around them. The visual of pulling small skeletal remains from freezing water is genuinely haunting, a reminder that horror isn't just about jump scares, but about confronting the reality of violence and loss. Simultaneously, Gwen enters a dreamscape to confront the grabber directly. This sequence plays out like something between a seance and a nightmare on Elm Street, with reality bending and breaking around them. The grabber has all the power here. It's his domain, his rules. But Gwen isn't fighting alone. She's channeled the spirits of all his victims, including her mother, and together they form a united front against the monster who stole their lives. The confrontation is both psychological and visceral. The grabber tries to break Gwen by showing her visions of what he did to her mother, the fear and pain of those final moments. But Gwen refuses to crumble. She tells him that fear is just the beginning, not the end. He taught an entire generation of children to be terrified, but he also taught them to be survivors, to be fighters, to refuse to let evil win. Finney succeeds in recovering the bodies just as Gwen delivers the final blow in the spiritual realm. The moment the 3 boys are brought up from the lake and laid to rest properly, the grabber's power shatters. He's tied to this place through his victims, and freeing them breaks his hold on the world. Ethan Hawke's final scene as the character is surprisingly melancholic. There's a moment where the mask comes off, and we see not a monster, but a broken, pathetic man who chose evil and is now facing the consequences of that choice. The final scene shows Gwen at school, where a younger student approaches her nervously and asks if the rumors about her having psychic visions are true. Gwen smiles and says they might be, then asks if the student needs help. The implication is clear. Gwen has accepted her gift and is ready to use it to help others, breaking the cycle of trauma by choosing to be a protector rather than a victim. The Black Phone 2 is a rare sequel that respects its predecessor while carving out its own identity. It's less concerned with replicating the claustrophobic intensity of the first film and more interested in exploring trauma, family, and the supernatural consequences of violence. The shift in focus from Finney to Gwen proves brilliant, with McGraw delivering a breakout performance that elevates every scene she's in. The film earned 72% on Rotten Tomatoes and $112 million at the box office, proving audiences were hungry for horror that treats its characters and themes seriously. If this breakdown of The Black Phone 2 left you thinking about trauma, supernatural vengeance, and the power of confronting your darkest fears, make sure to subscribe to Depthline. We deliver comprehensive analyses of films that refuse to take the easy path, movies that challenge audiences to feel and think deeply about what horror really means. New breakdowns drop every week, exploring the stories that linger long after the credits roll. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment telling us whether you think horror sequels should take risks like this one did, and remember, sometimes the scariest thing isn't the monster under your bed, but the unresolved pain you carry with you every day. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next breakdown.